Hey, welcome. Another episode of Data Download here on a Saturday morning, quiet August Saturday morning. For those of you who get the newsletter, great. I'll just read you a little bit out of it. You can go ahead and read yourself. For those of you who don't, let me just put right up on the screen. Easy to subscribe to, nycmedialab.org/newsletters. We have 3 fantastic newsletters. This is one of them. It's currently the only one that has a video, so there is that. I wanted to start with where the newsletter begins today. It's August. And so my first thought was, I'm going to go on a virtual vacation. And I put in the newsletter here, let me just put it up right on the screen. There it is. There is a link to virtual vacations. And I started to kind of go down that path of virtual vacations. And I got to be honest, I have too much to do to go on a virtual vacation right now. And also, they're a little one-dimensional, at least for now. So the bottom line is there's a lot to do. It's complicated and interesting times, as we all know. And so I decided, essentially, I'm staying put. And by the way, but having said that, if you're going to go on a virtual vacation, would love to have you share with folks where you've gone. If you're watching right now live on either Facebook or YouTube, please put it in the comments, and we'll share it with folks. Let's just see who's checking in. We got a couple of folks checking in. So share your virtual vacations with us. There was actually a really nice piece on NPR the other day about people sharing images out their window, which I thought was really sweet. That being said, complicated, interesting times, and so I'll just share with you what's in the newsletter today. Let's just start with the newsonomics piece about the New York Times. This is from Neiman Labs. Here's what I liked about this article. First of all, congratulations to our friend Meredith, who's moving from COO up to CEO in the fall. It really this is a Ken Doctor piece, and Ken's super smart. It really kind of takes apart how the Times has changed and how their revenue has changed and how they really are driving much more of their revenue based on subscriptions rather than on advertising, which I think gives them an enormous amount of power in terms of the future of the news business. Their customer is now you and I. Hopefully everyone who's reading this newsletter is paying for a digital subscription. If you're not, come on, write the check, swipe the credit card. This is a larger conversation, which we're going to get to in a minute, about social media. Who's the customer is a question I think where a lot of us are now thinking about in the media business. If the customer is the advertiser, then the reader, viewer is the product. And increasingly, I think we're all thinking deeply about whether or not we want to be the product or the customer. So maybe I'll raise that among those of you who are listening live, watching live. Do you want to be the customer or do you want to be the product? And do you think about that in your relationship with media companies increasingly? And that's going to be a larger question. That's going to be a question that we start to think about at the Media Lab Summit in the fall. This is a time of big questions. Big questions politically, big questions socially, being big questions in terms of inclusion, but absolutely big questions in terms of advertising and relationships between content creators and content consumers. And so really like this piece. Not going to read it all to you, except to say, highly recommend. It's the top of the newsletter for today, and would love your thoughts about it. So the next piece in the newsletter is about the congressional grilling of top CEOs. Hopefully you all watched it either live or in part. And I will tell you, this is a thought that I've been spending a good deal of time on now, which is there is a difference between consuming important information in its digest form and consuming important information in its raw form when you have access to both. And this is going to come up again later in the newsletter. But to begin with, the congressional grilling, if you will, I found, maybe you feel differently, I found to be kind of highly staged managed political theater on all sides. And by all sides, let's use the three sides. There's the Republican questions, of which the answers seemed less relevant than the questions. There was the Democratic questions, very different but equally theatrical. And then there was the CEO answers. And as a piece of political theater, the CEO's jobs were to not get flustered, be responsive, but only generally, gently and generally responsive, and not get caught in a faux pas that would make a headline that would make you the subject of further grilling. And then for both, what was interesting is both the Democrats and the Republicans in the committee seem to agree on the fact that tech companies are too powerful, too big, too powerful. That seemed to be a shared agreement. What to do about it was, as you might expect, split across party lines. But let's remember that, for example, Joe Biden has said quite clearly that he thinks Section 230 should be disassembled. So there isn't any moment here where Republicans say, we think that big tech should be broken up, and Democrats say, no, 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 we think it shouldn't be. I mean, everyone seems to agree on some kind of a breakup of some sort, but unclear exactly what that will mean. And so the reason I mentioned, I didn't watch all of it. I mean, it went on interminably, but I did check in and out over the course of the day and found that the tenor of it to be interesting. And it's available. You can certainly read the detailed review of it. We posted in the newsletter a thoughtful and we thought pretty relevant review from The Guardian, but there are certainly other places to get it. That being said, when we put things like this in the newsletter, it's because we think they're timely and relevant. And one of the things, I've talked about this before, we want the newsletter to be new enough and interesting enough and well enough curated that it takes people to places they wouldn't necessarily go. But we also want it to be timely and relevant. So we try and walk that line. All right, the next piece in the newsletter this week was an MIT technology review piece. The owner of WeChat thinks deepfakes could actually be good. I'm not sure I would go with good, although I might say inevitable. I've been around long enough that I remember fondly a character that some of our younger readers and viewers will not remember, but Google it if you don't know Max Headroom. Max Headroom was an animated character that was controlled by a human. It's reasonable enough to say that if I could say to my news stream, hey, I prefer my news readers to be explosive and political and fiery and leftist, or alternatively, I would like my news reader to be moderate and bipartisan and low key and factual, that it would we are at a moment in time when either of those characters could be auto-generated for me with relative ease. And we'll have an example of that in just a moment. So I'm not sure that I would go with good. I found good, obviously it was meant to be provocative. So that's why we thought that MIT putting it in their technology review piece was a good conversation starter. But if you haven't read it, it's in the newsletter, and I've left up on the screen the newsletter domain. If you haven't subscribed, it's free, and you can always unsubscribe if you find it not relevant. We try and put it at the end of the week just to give you a little bit of curated, thoughtful links and some conversation. All right, next from the newsletter, which brings me to the reason why this ties really relevantly back to the WeChat argument, is this is a $70 million sci-fi film with a star that is a robot. The robot's name is Erica. So don't confuse the robot Erica with Erica Matsumoto from the Media Lab. That would be a terrible mistake. Our real life Erica is much more charming and thoughtful and smart. But this is a film that I think is worth viewing, if not because you'll like it or it's good, but because the idea of a robotic lead character is relevant and timely. And, I don't remember now, my apologies, I don't remember where I heard this in my stream over the course of the week, but there was a conversation about Hollywood deals with Hollywood stars in which the studio can acquire the rights to their 22-year-old persona and use it in multiple films, which, is easy to paint as horrible for all kinds of reasons, but seems also inevitable. I mean, we had a conversation amongst the Media Lab team about which Keanu Reeves you would license if you were a studio, whether it would be the Speed Keanu Reeves, and some of the members of the team essentially said age was irrelevant. And then we got into a whole thing about male stars versus female stars and whether or not there's bias in the way Hollywood allows male leads to age gracefully, but not women. A conversation for another day. So then we get to our next two features, what we're watching and what we're listening to. And this gets back to my theme of the day, which is, don't necessarily think that if you consume the social media snippet of an event, you've gotten the full and relevant experience. So Barack Obama gave the eulogy at John Lewis's funeral this week. And, he wasn't the only president at the funeral. George W. Bush was there and gave some remarks. And Bill Clinton was there and gave some remarks. And I watched clips, not the entire funeral, but I did watch the entire Barack Obama eulogy. And the cadence of the 40-some minute remarks. Here, let's see what it is. I thought I knew the length. This is 40 minutes. The cadence was extraordinary. The way he began and the way that he told the story of his relationship Lewis, which I did not know and had never heard before. And then the way he talked about Lewis's life's work and his fierce determination and kindness was just almost overwhelmingly beautiful. And if you haven't watched it, it's in the newsletter. We put it there for a reason. There are some very strong words. There are some very warm and sweet and beautiful words. And there are some words that call you to action. And the clip that we found on YouTube, which was C-SPAN, not necessarily the fanciest logo, has been viewed 300,000 times since July 30th. I assume that there are other, my point here is, and this is the point of putting it in the newsletter, that we just wanted you to have the raw, unedited, complete clip, not the packaged news excerpt. And there is a moment in the 40-minute talk eulogy that clearly Obama knew would be excerpted out as the news bite of his talk, and that is relevant and timely and interesting, certainly, but not the only thing that's relevant and important. So, so if you can take the time, please do, consume as much of it as you find compelling and relevant, because 40 minutes in this busy world is a lot. And then next up, what we're listening to. This is a Vergecast piece about election cybersecurity and November 3rd. One of the things I worry about, this is a personal note, I worry about everyone checking out for August just for mental health purposes, and then coming back in September and being like, oh, wait, lots of the critical states we care about have early voting. And so, it's a mistake to think that November 3rd is the starting gate of this issue of cybersecurity and election access. So the Vergecast does a terrific job. Again, 50 minutes, not short, not a clip, well worth engaging and listening to, and pacing yourself, but getting engaged. By the way, if you need an alternate podcast recommendation, if this seems too political for August and you want something more soothing and engaging, the Michelle Obama podcast on Spotify is also amazing, and for all kinds of reasons that you might expect. That her first episode is a conversation with she and Barack about their, and it's fascinating. Their relationship is fascinating. The cadence between the two of them is fascinating. Their personal stories, which I'd known kind of broadly, but was nice to have be told in a colloquial, human way. So if Vergecast doesn't do it for you, go on Spotify and take a swing at the Michelle and Barack episode of Michelle Obama's new podcast. So that, and then one last thing in our long reads for this week. Google's secretive ATAP lab is imagining the future of smart devices. And I'm not gonna lie, I just really like this image. The idea that this is a smart insole for soccer players and is powered by Google's technology. And it's a great read. It's very thoughtful. It's very interesting. Smart devices. Having just spent the better part of the last week wrestling with getting some, I think, relatively simple lights to turn on and off in my house. We're a long way away from this being plug and play simple. That being said, my colleague Erica Matsumoto has a terrific newsletter this week about Google's new open beta into its smart and fast ability to take natural language and turn it into product. And we should put that, we'll put that in a link somewhere, but also you should be subscribing as well. So if you go to the newsletters link that's on my screen right now, you'll be able to subscribe to this newsletter if you aren't already getting it, and our monthly Media Lab newsletter and our Innovation Monitor newsletter that Erica writes in conjunction with our friends at the Edge Group, who are amazing and wonderful. So with that, we're out of time. Hopefully this has been helpful and relevant and interesting. And there I am, back on the screen. So thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, thanks for subscribing. And lots of conversations going on at the Media Lab this week about our September summit, which you're going to hear more and more about as August progresses. It's going to be very, very, very exciting. And I hope you'll attend, and I hope you'll share. With that, see you next week. Have a great weekend.